Fitch, President and CEO of Congressional Management Foundation, author of Citizens Handbook to Influencing Elected Officials. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
House of Representatives about to come in. Continue to keep your channel on C-SPAN as our coverage of the debt talks continues this week. Thanks for watching.
The chair lays before the House a communication from the Speaker.
The Speaker's Rooms, Washington, D.C., July 26, 2011. I hereby appoint the Honorable Dennis Ross to act as Speaker pro tempore on this day. Signed, John Boehner, Speaker of the House of Representatives.
Pursuant to the order of the House of January 5, 2011, the chair will now recognize members from lists submitted by the majority and the minority leaders for morning hour debate. The chair will alternate recognition between the parties, with each party limited to 1 hour, and each member other than the majority and minority leaders and the minority whip limited to 5 minutes each. But in no event shall debate continue beyond 11:50 a.m. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Oregon, Mr. Blumauer, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There is an air of unreality here on Capitol Hill. There are some people with no experience in government, little knowledge, and less regard about the outcomes who are pontificating, lecturing, threatening. The disconnect between the rhetoric, the reality, between governance and an ideological agenda is in large part why we are in the conundrum we are today with the debt ceiling, something that has routinely been increased year after year for decades. It was on full display in the Republican-controlled House yesterday as we debated the Interior Appropriation Bill. Now, remember last week, the Republicans took to the floor with a so-called cut, cap, and balance proposal, which is their answer going forward with the economy. It would impose an 18% limit on the amount of spending that the federal government could employ in any 1 year. Now, remember, that is not what we have done for years. Ronald Reagan never proposed a budget that was even 21% of gross domestic product. So it's a dramatic reduction, more than 14% less than anything Ronald Reagan ever proposed. Well, yesterday in the debate, my colleague from Kansas offered an amendment that I personally found destructive and unbalanced, that would have done terrible things, singling out for elimination the National Endowment for the Arts, the National Endowment for the Humanities, zeroing out important resources for construction for fish and wildlife, construction and acquisition of land. It would be a 30% reduction in water infrastructure. Overall, it would have been an 11% reduction. But at least it was honest. This is where, in fact, some of my Republican colleagues want to go. In fact, it is less than what they would have imposed with their proposal the week before. As I argued against it on the floor, I predicted that it would fail overwhelmingly, that most Republicans would vote against it, because even though they are willing to make reckless proposals disconnected from reality, if the only consequences are polls and politics, when it really comes down to basics, even they don't want to impose it. Remember what happened on the floor of the House when we were debating Republican and Democratic alternatives to the budget? The Republican study group offered up their proposal that went even further than my friend Paul Ryan's. And when it was passing, we watched Republicans start to twist arms to get people to vote against it, because, again, it was something they thought was great politics and theater, but if it came closer to reality, they understood that it would hurt them if the American public understood the real agenda. Well, we're now in a very serious stage dealing with the debt ceiling. Actions matter. Too many are still acting like they're on the campaign trail or at a Tea Party rally or on a Fox TV show shout fest. There have already been negative consequences from the reckless action holding the debt ceiling hostage. American businesses are paying more. There are threats that we're going to be paying more for interest in the international bond market. It's past time to stop this dangerous posturing. There is enough irresponsibility displayed to avoid putting the rhetoric in effect into a budget. Now is the time to stop playing games on the budget deficit. We've seen this movie before. The last time the Republicans took control in 1995, there was a debate on lifting the debt ceiling, or rather, imposing a balanced budget amendment. It failed by one vote in the Senate, and it failed with the single Republican no vote, Mark Hatfield from Oregon. Senator Hatfield, in a profile in Courage, stood up and he made clear he was all in favor of balancing the budget, but not with a gimmick long into the future. He was chair of the Appropriations Committee. He invited his colleagues to make the action by reducing the budget, not playing games with gimmicks. That's what we should do today.
Thank you. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Poe, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, delay, 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 delay is the administration's energy plan. The Keystone XL pipeline project would bring 700,000 barrels of oil a day from Alberta, Canada, to refineries in southeast Texas. This would provide more energy for America. The President has had over 2 years to approve the project, but the State Department, the EPA, and out-of-towners have stonewalled the project on alleged environmental grounds. Pipelines are the most cost-effective and most environmentally sound way to transport oil and natural gas. Oil must reach our refineries somehow. We can either import oil through a safe, reliable pipeline from our neighbors or on risky tankers coming from unstable Middle Eastern countries. Even the EPA should be able to figure this out after 2 years of delay, delay, delay. Our neighbors in Canada have developed a safe way to obtain crude oil from their oil sands. Unlike many of the countries in the world, the Canadians are concerned about environmental issues in crude oil production. They will sell us their crude oil. It will be piped to refineries in my district in southeast Texas and will be refined into energy and byproducts of crude oil. And it will create jobs in America. If the White House fails to act, the Canadians will take their oil someplace else. The Chinese are interested in buying that oil, so it's going to be used and it will go to China. Why not let it come to America? Some environmental extremists are against the project. Of course they are. They are against every type of energy that comes from below the ground. But they have no answers for our energy needs. They say they want green energy. Well, I do too. But there isn't sufficient green energy yet to run America. So they're against everything, it seems, except those curly CFL light bulbs that come from China. They're all in favor of those. The radicals are against nuclear energy because, well, the Japanese had an earthquake that caused reactors to overheat, so no more nuclear energy. They're against natural gas because they don't like fracking, even though safe fracking has been around for decades, and they don't even understand what fracking does. They don't want America to use coal, even though our resources are abundant and new technology has made clean coal safer and more efficient. They don't even like the wind turbines because running turbines at night in West Texas may bother the flight pattern of the bats. They don't want more offshore drilling. Certainly can't have that. And of course, they are against domestic crude oil anyway because they hate American oil companies. So what's the answer? Well, the White House plan that has only been offered is to give American money to Brazil so Brazil can drill off its shores and then America will buy their crude oil. But no more offshore drilling for us, it seems. If we're going to buy crude oil from foreign countries, let's buy it from our neighbor, our ally, Canada. Or do the progressives prefer we keep buying crude oil from dictators like Chavez in Venezuela, or continue to be held hostage by the monopoly of OPEC and Middle Eastern countries? Or do they just want us to do without energy altogether? Meanwhile, gasoline is around $4 a gallon. So it seems to me the progressives, if they get their way, will have no progress in energy self-reliance, and we'll regress and go back to the horse and buggy days. But whoa, wait a minute, Mr. Speaker. We can't go back to using horses because they, too, cause pollution. Mr. President, approve the pipeline. Show some leadership. Time to start making progress on taking care of America's energy needs. And that's just the way it is. I yield back.
Gentleman yielded back. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Quigley, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Fellow citizens, we cannot escape history. We of this Congress and this administration will be remembered in spite of ourselves. No personal significance or insignificance shall spare one or another of us. The fiery trial through which we pass will light us down in honor or dishonor to the latest generation. We, even we here, hold the power and bear the responsibility. We shall nobly save or meanly lose the last best hope of Earth. Lincoln, of course, was talking about the state of a nation in peril on December 1st in his address to Congress in 1862. But if this nation had not this kind of leadership, the leadership of that magnitude, who knows where we would be today? They faced terrible consequences, and yet still had the extraordinary foresight and fortitude to charge ahead. Today, we too face consequences. We face consequences of international economic impact, environmental and ecological destruction. We consider this week, of course, a debt limit crisis that has brought out the best and worst amongst men and women I respect, both here on this House floor and on the other side of this Capitol building, and on cable news stations across the country. We are also considering here in this House an Interior and Environmental Appropriations Bill that simply says to our children, you clean it up, we don't care to bear the burden. This bill does irreparable damage to our programs that keep our air clean, our water drinkable, and that protect our national and natural heritage. These are not dollars spent without thought, nor are they investments of a trivial nature, as some would have us believe. Simply put, these are science-based, pragmatic investments in public health. These cuts, all told, will not save the country a penny. The policy riders included in this bill will cost tens of thousands of lives. The bill will expose our children, families, and communities to unnecessary illness and degrade our irreplaceable natural resources. But this week we are also not stopping at a debt ceiling quagmire and an Interior and Environmental Appropriations abhorrence. We will continue to consider a measure that would deem congressional approval for the Keystone XL tar sands pipeline. The Keystone system would flow from Alberta down to the Gulf Coast, threading right through the vast Ogallala aquifer, the main drinking water source for the Midwest. You can ignore the dozen leaks the Keystone 1 system has had in the last year, stoking fears of a spill in the aquifer from the proposed expansion pipeline. You can ignore the 42,000 gallons that seeped from an ExxonMobil pipeline into the Yellowstone River in Montana earlier this month, under which Keystone XL would also run. You can ignore the science that says the high-energy process of production of tar sands increases greenhouse gas emissions, pollutes water sources, and harms the proposed region's boreal forest. And you can ignore the fact that testimony of TransCanada officials to Canadian regulators include the fact that the pipeline would drive gasoline prices in the Midwest higher, not lower. But let's forget all that. On procedure alone, this congressional consideration of a bill that is currently under review by the Department of State is unnecessary and unprecedented, potentially negatively affecting our national security and safety. This proposed pipeline needs no congressional approval. In fact, this proposed expansion need not be approved at all. It's drawn criticism from the Environmental Protection Agency, who suggested that the State Department should consider how construction would affect wetlands, migratory birds, and communities through which it passes. So we stand here today to consider approving a project expansion that has been deemed mediocre at best. We stand here today to consider an environmental appropriations bill that has been deemed the worst we've ever seen. And we stand here today while everyone around us fights against a compromise that might keep our standing in the international economy from dipping further than we've already seen it fall. Indeed, we cannot escape history. We hold the power and bear the responsibility. We shall nobly save or meanly lose the last best hope of earth. President Lincoln, truer words were never spoken. Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes the gentlewoman from California, Ms. Chu, for 5 minutes.
For so many, education is the key to the American dream. But for so many, a good education seems like it is beyond reach. That is why I am introducing the Diploma Act, or Developing Innovative Partnerships and Learning Opportunities that Motivate Achievement. This legislation will address obstacles to learning by giving out grants to schools, social service programs, and the local community to create comprehensive community-based solutions that will ensure that our struggling students will succeed. For a while now, I've advocated for changing the tone of the debate that surrounds school reform. Too often, critics point fingers instead of offering solutions. That is why I'm pushing for real change, dramatic change in our schools that harnesses the energy of parents, the community, and the school to turn around our failing schools that lift up all our students. Now, there's no denying that this approach can be challenging and hard work. But research shows when communities, parents, and schools collaborate and work together, there's nothing we can't achieve. I know this because I've seen it firsthand in my district. In East Los Angeles, Esteban Y. Torres High School is a shining example of community school. It's the first new school built in the neighborhood in 85 years, and its facilities and classrooms are simply magnificent. But to me, the most awe-inspiring part is the community-based approach at the heart of Esteban Torres. With the help of the Los Angeles Education Partnership, the federal and full-service community schools grant program, Esteban Torres tapped into the resources of the surrounding community to overcome challenges facing their students regarding health care, limited English proficiency, and financial literacy. Esteban Torres partnered with Bienvenidos for a full-service health center on campus that will help maintain the health and well-being of their students so they are ready and able to learn. Pan American Bank partnered to help the high schoolers create a student-run financial center to teach the importance of a budget and proper money management, skills which will stick with these students for the rest of their lives. Luis Rodriguez and Tia Chucha's Centro Cultural joined the effort to establish the first ever bookstore in East Los Angeles, making it easier for students to expand their education outside their classroom. And the effect of these programs is apparent on the smiles of these students' faces on their way to school, in the cafeteria, and the classroom. This type of engagement and support is giving students in the community new opportunities and opening their world. Across America, our students face problems like homelessness, lack of health care, and limited English proficiency. Research tells us that 2/3 of the achievement gap is due to factors outside of school, and even the best teachers have a hard time overcoming these obstacles. And a recent study from Chicago found that when we don't address students' social and economic disadvantages outside schools, the hard work done inside the school can be futile. That's why the Diploma Act is so necessary. Local groups can coordinate, integrate, and facilitate services aimed at strengthening student achievement, such as dropout prevention, family engagement, tutoring, extending learning services, health care, and social support. And the bill contains strong accountability measures, including independent evaluations, to measure results and identify best practices. These partnerships will make a difference in the lives of students in my district. When students are provided the right kind of support and opportunities to help them learn, nothing can stop them. The Diploma Act ensures that America's next Nobel Prize laureate can come from any background or community because they had the support they needed to succeed.
Gentlewoman yields back. The chair now recognizes the gentlewoman from North Carolina, Ms. Fox, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, is President Obama really pushing to raise taxes while unemployment hovers around 9% just to get an increase in the debt limit? Republicans beg to disagree. Increasing taxes on American job creators and families will mean fewer new jobs are created, which will result in more Americans remaining unemployed. Washington does not need tax hikes to raise the debt ceiling. Washington needs spending cuts. The federal government is addicted to taxpayer money. The solution is not giving it more of Americans' hard-earned money. No, the solution is to halt the runaway spending and permanently reform Washington's reckless spending habits. We can fix this problem and pay our bills on time, Mr. Speaker. However, refusing to cut spending and going with the status quo tax hikes would be a recipe for disaster that will rob future generations of a chance to fulfill the American dream. I yield back.
Gentlewoman yields back. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Oregon, Mr. DeFazio, for 5 minutes.
It's clear to the American public that Congress, especially the Senate, is very good at doing one thing, and that is nothing. Now, perhaps we can capitalize on this strength to resolve the impasse over the deficit reduction. Well, how could that work? How could Congress do nothing but solve this problem? Well, within 17 months, by doing nothing, we could lower the deficit by $3.8 trillion. And in fact, the President could reinforce the message. Just in case Congress decided to do something, he could say, no, if they do that, I will pocket veto it. I will do nothing. So we got a good chance here. Congress does nothing or the President pocket vetoes. He does nothing. We can save $3.8 trillion. Problem solved. How do we do that? We allow all the Bush tax cuts to expire. Now you heard the gentlelady before, oh my God, the job creators will pay more. Yeah, the billionaire hedge fund guys on Wall Street might pay a little bit more in taxes. They're creating so many jobs today. And the other millionaires. Warren Buffett says it's kind of ironic that he pays a much lower tax rate than his secretary. Now, if we let the Bush tax cuts expire and adopted some modest reforms, those inequities would no longer be in place, and we could have over $4 trillion of deficit reduction with a little bit of shared sacrifice. And yes, it would ask the millionaires and billionaires to pay as much as they did in the Clinton era, an era when we had 3.8% unemployment. We actually paid down debt in this country. That was good for all Americans. And we asked those who are most capable to contribute the most, but we asked a little bit of everybody. And that's what this doing nothing would do. Now, after we've restored some confidence here by this big step of doing nothing, we could do another half of nothing and put people back to work. Now, how can we do half of nothing and put people back to work? Well, President Obama has adopted this cockamamie Republican idea of a Social Security tax holiday putting people to work. I know a lot of families that can use an extra $20 a week. That's true. But them spending $20 a week on junk made in China or food on the table doesn't put any Americans back to work. And if you're unemployed today, one of the 18 million unemployed, you don't get the $20 a week. But we're borrowing $110 billion to do that under the guise that this is creating jobs. And the President mentioned last night he wants to continue creating jobs that way. Well, guess what? It's not working. So we do half of nothing. We allow the Social Security tax holiday to expire. Doesn't create any jobs. We don't borrow the $110 billion from China to put in the Social Security Trust Fund. Instead, we borrow $110 billion to put people back to work in private sector jobs. we resolved to begin to rebuild our crumbling infrastructure. $110 billion applied to the 150,000 bridges falling down on the federal system, the $80 billion backlog on our transit vehicles, the pavement that's disintegrating across the country could put millions to work. And not just construction workers. Engineers would go to work. People who manufacture things, steel, buses, tires, engines, all those people would go to work. We could put millions to work. And guess what that does? When people go to work, they don't collect unemployment, they don't need food stamps to feed their family, and they pay taxes. That reduces the deficit too. So by doing one big nothing and one half a nothing, and then one little action to put people back to work, nothing that anybody's talking about around here. Where are the jobs? Who's talking about jobs? We need jobs. Let's stop blathering around here. Let's resolve to do nothing and solve the debt crisis, and resolve to do half a nothing and then apply the money that we save by doing that nothing to putting people back to work. That's an agenda a little more productive for the American people.
Gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Tennessee, Mr. Duncan, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I want to cover two or three things very briefly here this morning. First of all, the Washington Post reported on its front page yesterday that, quote, U.S. taxpayer money has been indirectly funneled to the Taliban under a $2.16 billion, $2 billion transportation contract. This is crazy. It should not be part of the job of the U.S. military to promote Afghan businesses. The official report found, quote, documented credible evidence of involvement in a criminal enterprise of support for the enemy, unquote. This is ridiculous. And it comes on the heels of a report last week that the Navy had spent at least $300 million, on two ships that were never completed, never sent on a mission, and are now headed for a salvage yard in Brownsville, Texas. Are there no fiscal conservatives at the Pentagon? And sadly, most people in Congress today are afraid to cut the Defense Department for fear they will appear to be unpatriotic. And yet it seems to me, Mr. Speaker, that it's unpatriotic to continue with mega billions in wasteful spending or billions in spending that promote businesses in other countries. No part of the federal government should be immune from having to save taxpayer money. The American people would be far better off today if every department and agency had to take a fair, across-the-board 10% cut. Let me mention a couple of other things. We're going to vote later today on the Keystone Pipeline project. This is a project that will provide 20,000 jobs and also will lead to 500,000 gallons of gasoline coming into this, gallons of oil coming into this country each day. This will help bring down the price of gasoline, and yet it is opposed by a very powerful group of wealthy environmental elitists. Most of these environmentalists today seem to come from very upper income or very wealthy families, and perhaps they don't realize how much they hurt the poor and the lower income and the working people by destroying jobs and driving up prices, but that's what they're doing. And they're certainly doing that in blocking or delaying this Keystone Pipeline project. We also we need to make sure that more jobs are created in this country in every way possible. Just today in the Washington Post there's a poll that says that 49% of the American people are finding it very difficult to find jobs, and 33% say somewhat difficult. 82% of the American people say that it's difficult to find jobs in this country today. And yet we continue to cave into environmental radicals and destroy jobs and really just do nothing other than help foreign energy producers. So I think it's time that we start siding with the American people and stop siding with foreign energy producers. Lastly, let me just say that the falsest thing that is said during this debate over the debt ceiling is that some people are trying to help billionaires or multimillionaires. No one is trying to help the billionaires. They can help themselves. What the debate is about is, do you want the money spent by the federal government, and they will spend it without any question in the most wasteful, least effective, least efficient way possible, or do you want the money to be in the private sector where it will do much more to create jobs and hold down costs and hold down prices? If that wasn't true, the Soviet Union or Cuba would have been heaven on earth, because in those countries the government took almost all the money. So it's not about protecting billionaires, not in the least. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. The gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes the gentlewoman from California, Ms. Woolsey, for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, last week, General David Petraeus relinquished control of the Afghanistan command. He did this as he prepares to take over as CIA director this fall. We're all grateful to General Petraeus for 37 years of honorable and distinguished service. But the fact remains that the fundamental realities in Afghanistan haven't changed. The New York Times put it plainly, noting that the general is, and I quote them, the general is leaving behind a country racked by deep political instability, whose fledgling security forces are fighting a weakened but deadly insurgency that kills coalition troops and Afghan civilians and officials nearly every day, unquote. That's a pretty damning assessment, Mr. Speaker, and it's accurate. In recent weeks, two of President Karzai's most powerful allies, including his brother, have been gunned down by the Taliban, and ordinary Afghan citizens are caught in the line of fire as never before. The UN recently reported that more Afghan civilians were killed in the first half of 2011 than in any other six-month period since the war began. Some of these casualties are the accidental result of errant attacks and night raids by U.S. and NATO forces. But the overwhelming majority of civilian deaths came at the hands of insurgents, often using suicide bombers. There were nearly 1,500 civilian deaths between January and June. But according to the UN, that might be a low estimate, given that it doesn't include killings in northern Afghanistan in the last few months, because the UN closed their office in that region after it was attacked by a mob that killed several staffers. It's clear, Mr. Speaker, that after nearly a decade of war, we haven't been able to vanquish the enemy and bring stability and security to Afghanistan. If after 10 years we can't do more to subdue the insurgency, then clearly we must be doing something wrong. Clearly, there must be a better approach. I've been pushing for that new approach for many years now. It's called smart security, and it's based on the belief that sending 100,000 troops to occupy a sovereign country is not the best way to win trust and to promote peace. And which has proven to fan the flames of resentment, to give increased momentum to extremists, and to put lives of American troops and Afghan civilians in danger. What we need, Mr. Speaker, is an Afghanistan civilian surge, as bold as the military surge that has gotten us further entangled in this failed war. That's what smart security is all about. Instead of sending troops, let's send humanitarian aid. Let's send our civilian experts who can help rebuild Afghan schools and hospitals, who can help, and I say help because we want the Afghanistan people to be doing this, but we can help where necessary, who can help rebuild the political infrastructure and rule of law that will strengthen Afghan democracy, who can promote political reconciliation and peaceful conflict resolution. As he left Afghanistan, General Petraeus said, and I quote him, "We should be clear-eyed about the challenges ahead." His successor, General John Allen, said, and I quote him, "There will be tough days ahead, and I have no illusions about the challenges we will face together." But I say, Mr. Speaker, continuing with the current policy demonstrates that, in fact, we are not being clear-eyed at all, that we are gripped by dangerous illusions about what a military occupation can achieve. This strategy has been given a chance to work, 10 years. It hasn't worked. It's time for something new. It's time for smart security, and it's time to bring our troops home. I yield back.
Thank you. The gentlewoman yields back. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from New York, Mr. Towns, for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. This is a sad day in America. There are people who have to choose between paying their bills and eating a decent meal. All I hear is that we have a spending problem. We have a spending problem. We have a spending. Well, I want to be sure we do not try to solve our spending problem on the backs of the poor, the backs of children, and on the backs of our senior citizens. We have been cutting services for the poor, children, and seniors for years. Go back and look at the record, and you will see that this is a fact. And if you add up all the money we are spending on children and seniors, it would not begin to make a dent in the federal deficit. We spend less than 10% of the budget on children. That means we are not seriously investing in the future of this nation. When we cut programs like WIC, we are literally taking food out of the mouths of babies. And I say our priorities are certainly misguided or upside down. When we cut tens of millions of dollars from juvenile justice delinquency programs, then we better get ready to spend hundreds of millions of dollars on more prisons. And when we cut Medicare, we really do a disservice to the senior citizens in this country. When we look to save money by cutting Medicare and Social Security, senior citizens have worked all of their lives, putting a good portion of their paycheck into a system that paid for the well-being of their parents and grandparents. If the truth is to be told, today's seniors have paid more than $2.5 trillion extra into Social Security, so that it would be safe, and here we are talking about making cuts. When President Ronald Reagan signed the law to increase the payroll tax, it was to make sure Social Security would be there for future generations. But the government spent the money, and now we want to make seniors pay again. That is wrong. Our senior citizens have paid enormous sums of money into Medicare, and now people are talking about ending it as we know it. Certainly, rising health care costs is causing Medicare problems, but we can fix those problems without making it a voucher program. I call on my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to take a deep breath and think clearly about what we are doing. Children and seniors are the most vulnerable citizens in our country. They are depending on us to use sound judgment and not be swayed by the political gamesmanship. I stand here this morning to tell you that I intend to fight for the well-being of our children and our senior citizens. And I'm going to fight for the well-being of them. Of course, we need to uncut, uncap, and get some real balance to this discussion. I think that we need to have a serious discussion recognizing the fact that our children and our seniors must be protected. And of course, every time I hear one of our members talking about the fact that we need to cut Medicare, we need to cut WIC, we need to cut, and I think that we need to stop and take a real deep breath and recognize that when we do that, we have to end up creating other things, and we do not save money. On that note, I yield back.
Thank you. The gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes the gentlewoman from Ohio, Ms. Kaptur, for 5 minutes.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 5 minutes.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, too often Congress and Washington deals with symptoms, not underlying causes. And that's what's going on with this current debate about the debt limit. It's kind of like you have an ill patient that has a fever, and you say, well, you know, they're sick, so throw some water on the patient and their fever will go down, but you never deal with the underlying infection, the underlying cause that is tripping the fever in the first place. Let me put a little math on the table here this morning if we look at the current economic challenge. When you have 14 million Americans out of work and up to 24 million who are working part-time or they've completely dropped out of the workforce, they're not earning a check. Money's not being taken out of that check to pay their social insurance for Social Security. It's not going to pay their regular taxes, and so the government falls short on revenues. We have a jobs problem. That's the problem that underlies the deficit problem that we face. Now, if you look just at this year alone, 2011, so far this year, the government's taken in over $1,202 billion in revenue. That's not bad for an economy that's just limping along. But we've spent $1.8 trillion. So we've spent already this year over $600 billion that we didn't have. We've had to borrow that money, and that gets put on the long-term deficit. But why do we have those costs this year? We have those costs because the revenues aren't coming in at the same rate as in prior years. When you have 14 to 24 million people who want a better job and can't get one, that causes, or that's the underlying problem which Washington fails to see or address. Now, the cost of that unemployment and the lack of revenues, you say, well, look at this huge accumulated debt, which is over $14 trillion. But where did that come from? Let me outline the reasons. The largest share, not only of this year's deficit, but of prior debt that we've accumulated, is due to a lagging economy. Families know this. They can't pay as much in taxes or any taxes when they're out of work. And if you take a look at the costs of the sluggish economy caused by Wall Street abuse, that's what threw us into this mess in the first place, right? Back in 2008. The increased costs of unemployment are staggering. First, we have to pay the unemployment checks and add. Some people even got 99 weeks of unemployment. The costs of food for those people are enormous. When an economy isn't functioning, the costs of medical care, and so many across this country simply can't get good care. That's all tied into a very sluggish economy. The costs of unemployment are huge. And then the costs of the housing meltdown. All the bad mortgages, 4 out of 5 bad mortgages. Did Wall Street take care of its dirty laundry? No. They gave it to you, the American people. At the FHA, the Federal Housing Administration, at Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae, the Veterans Administration, guess who's holding all the mortgages that are underwater? 80% of them. Us, the people of the United States, not Wall Street. Did they write off any losses? No, 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 no. They gave them to us. That is a huge and growing part of the federal deficit. Then there's $1 trillion that's been spent on 2 wars that have not been paid for. That is a major part of the deficit. We can't ignore that. Do we say we should have a war tax? Do we say we should end the wars? Do we say our allies should pay more? The point is we haven't said anything but just put that $1 trillion on the deficit. Then let's take a look at the Bush $1 trillion tax giveaway to the very wealthy who said that if we gave them the money, they would create jobs in our country. Guess what? They took the money and they created jobs offshore. Corporate profits are at all-time highs, and are jobs increasing in this country? No. Those corporate profits are due to the booking of foreign profits here in our country. So you say, tax, give them more tax breaks? Why? Unless they invest in our country in job creation here. And finally, Bush had this idea for pharmaceuticals. Don't let the federal government bargain the cost of pharmaceuticals in Medicare and Medicaid. When we can't do that, that adds billions, hundreds of billions of dollars to our deficit. Mr. Speaker, we ought to address causes, not symptoms. I yield back my remaining time.
The gentlewoman yields back. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Woodall, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'm pleased to come to the floor today. I'm still a little bit winded. I was over in the Ways and Means Committee room. We were talking about exactly these issues. I'm embarrassed that my fitness is such a space that running up the stairs wins me. But that's what happens when you don't focus on something, when you don't put in the time it takes to stay fit. Things degrade, and that's exactly what's happened with our economy, Mr. Speaker. It's absolutely true that folks are out of work, and it's absolutely true that the best form of unemployment relief is a paycheck. It's not an unemployment check, it's a paycheck. But why are these jobs going overseas? And this is the real debate that happens up here absolutely every day, because people just believe different things about how it is that we put Americans back to work. Every single person who comes to this House floor wants Americans to go back to work, wants America's economy to be the pride of the world once again. But I will tell you the reason we lose jobs overseas is not because we're taxing businesses too little. It's because we're taxing businesses too much. We have the single highest corporate tax rate in the world in America. Why does Sony want to locate their next plant here? Why does Ricoh want to locate their next plant here? Why does Whirlpool want to keep their plants here? We punish business in this country through our tax code like no other country in the world. Now, is there a regulatory component of that, too, that we need to solve to make America attractive for business? There absolutely is. Is there a health care component of that as those costs rise? Absolutely there is. Is there a payroll tax cost in that we need to address, the largest tax that 80% of Americans pay? Absolutely there is. And there is only one proposal in the House that does it, in the Ways and Means Committee right now across the street, right here behind you, Mr. Speaker, in the Ways and Means Committee room is holding a hearing on H.R. 25, the fair tax. The fair tax eliminates these income taxes and moves America to a consumption tax model. America is the only country in the OECD nations, those economically developed nations, that does not have a consumption tax. The fair tax shifts us in that direction. And what it does, for the first time, only bill in Congress that does it, it eliminates every single bit of corporate welfare in the entire United States tax code. Oil companies, gone. Solar companies, gone. Foreign companies, gone. Every single tax break in the code is abolished, Mr. Speaker, because we know the free market works best when the market is free. And we know that businesses don't pay taxes. Consumers pay taxes. There is not a penny that we charge Walmart that they don't roll right into their costs and pass it along to us. You see it. You see it absolutely every day. If we raise gas taxes, gas prices are going to go up. If we lower gas taxes, gas prices go down. The market sorts those things out. Have you ever been to a Coke machine, Mr. Speaker? I'm from Atlanta, so I'll talk to you about Coke machines. But usually they're going to sit beside a Pepsi machine. Have you ever seen the Coke cost $1 and the Pepsi right beside it cost $2? No. Do you ever see the Coke sell for $1.50 and the Pepsi beside it try to sell for $5? No. And that's not just because Coke's a wonderful product. It's because the consumer rules in America. And price matters. You can't charge whatever you want. You can only charge what the consumer will pay. And when taxes go up, consumers have to pay more. The fair tax, Mr. Speaker, will bring those jobs back to America like no other proposal in this Congress. It eliminates those corporate income taxes, and it eliminates payroll taxes. Have you thought about your payroll tax recently? 15.3% of every paycheck that you get. Now, the wealthy don't pay payroll taxes because they're making their money in interest or dividends or capital gains, these things that payroll taxes don't come out of. Those of us who work for paychecks, we pay payroll taxes. And at 15.3%, the payroll tax is the largest tax that 80% of Americans pay. Largest tax that 80% of American families pay, and we don't spend any time on the floor discussing that. We argue about income taxes all the time. Half of America doesn't even pay income taxes anymore. Payroll taxes are the taxes that American people pay. 15.3%, and it comes out of your paycheck before you even get to see your paycheck. Milton Friedman, Nobel Prize winning economist, who helped during World War II establish the withholding system Government needed money in a hurry. It was wartime. That's when we began sucking money out of your paycheck before you ever see your paycheck. Milton Friedman said worst decision of his life was not working to do away with the withholding system once World War II ended. Because you need to know how much money you're paying. You need to know what it costs you to run this United States government. We talk about trillions. Have you thought about $1 trillion, Mr. Speaker? $1 trillion. The cost of the President's health care plan, for example. If you started a business on the day Jesus Christ was born, and you were so bad at your small business, Mr. Speaker, you lost $1 million a day, every day, 7 days a week, from the day Jesus was born through today, you would have to continue losing money for another 700 years, Mr. Speaker, to lose your first $1 trillion. We throw that number around like it's nothing. It is something. We need jobs back in this country, Mr. Speaker. The fair tax will do it. I encourage folks to pay attention to what's happening in the Ways and Means Committee today on H.R. 25, and I yield back my time.
Thank you. The gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Georgia. I'm sorry. The gentlewoman from Texas, Ms. Jackson Lee, for 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. My good friends have come to the floor of the House. A good friend just came and offered some solutions, and I would say that it's important for members to have ideas and to be able to engage on behalf of the American people. Every time we stand in this well, we should be rising to make the lives of the American people, those who have entrusted us to be the holders of the values of this great country, we should be moving on their behalf. So this morning, I'm asking that we get on with it. It's important to be discussing tax reform, but as many of us know, that is a long, protracted process of give and take. And many Americans will understand what the payroll tax was all about when they look in the faces of their seniors and themselves, and they know that part of that is Social Security. And we know for a fact that Social Security has been a lifeline for millions of Americans, and it is solvent. And it's important to know that America is not broke. But the good work of the Ways and Means Committee and the good work of the Judiciary Committee, which is meeting right now, and I'll be heading on to that committee to talk about preventing corruption in business and making sure the American people get their fair share. It is important that we move on. And how do we move on? We do something that Americans have said, by and large, they want us to do together. And that is, let's get past this debt ceiling, do something that has been done time after time after time. Yes, we have grown as a nation, and the reason is because in World War II, we were not 300 million plus people. We didn't have all the assets and responsibilities. In fact, the wars of Iraq and Afghanistan were longer than World War II. And all of those monies were spent under the last administration, tax cuts that went about for individuals who, by and large, have said no thank you because they want to invest in America. So I'm prepared to join with my many friends to work on moving this country forward, but let's move on. Let's move on beyond the impossible proposal given by Speaker Boehner that focuses on a hybrid vote now for the debt ceiling and then come back and fight it out again in 6 months. That is not the consistency and the evenness that is necessary for all of those who are seeking employment, or all of those businesses, or all of those in the arena of money making. They need an even pathway. And so while we get on with the ordinary business, so that we can begin to talk about the growth of this country, education for the young people, making sure the doors of businesses stay open, talk about how do we fix a tax system where we all can benefit. But as long as we are wallowing in the ordinary work, the work that should just go on, we'll never reach the point of sanity. Which is to sit down at the table of reconciliation and compromise. I know we have it in us. We like each other. But it appears to the American people that we may not like them. So I would just ask, we're nearing the resolution of the debt ceiling. Again, to pay the bills that were built up between 2000 and 2008. billions of dollars spent in Afghanistan, billions lost in untoward contracts. You don't even know where the monies have gone. Iraq, money's lost. A war that was, in essence, a detour. And let me just say, every time I say that, I always thank our soldiers and their families, because they are not a detour. They accepted the call to duty. And we owe them a great deal of appreciation, but the policymakers sent them into wars that are going on and on and on, and it caused this country to pay for these wars. At the same time, drastic draconian cuts in the revenue coming into the United States bank account. So here we are, having left in 2000 with President Clinton with $500 billion of surplus. We came out of 2008 in enormous debt. So what are we doing today? The debt ceiling is simply saying, pay America's bills. And it's also saying to the many countries around the world, which we appreciate, buying our Treasury notes, that is of value to the United States. The dollar has been stronger than any other currency, except for the manipulation that goes on in China. But it's stronger than the euro. So, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Speaker, it is important to pass the debt ceiling, get past this frivolity
The
of doing
gentlewoman's
it
time has
twice.
expired.
It is time to pass and move forward. The Reid proposal can bring all of us together, and that's what we should do, is begin to study it,
Gentlewoman's
look at
time
it,
has
Mr.
expired.
Speaker, on behalf of the American people. I yield back.
Gentlewoman yields back. The chair now recognizes the gentlewoman from New York, Ms. Hochul, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise for 5 minutes to revise and extend my remarks. Less than 2 months on this job, I only have one question to ask. Is anyone in this body listening to the people who sent us here? I can only conclude at this point that the answer is no, or we would not be teetering on the precipice of not just a government shutdown, but an intentional, and I say intentional, economic shutdown, the likes of which we have never seen in this country. I say intentional because the stakes of this high-expense game of chicken. You all know the game of chicken. You got a couple of crazy teenagers racing toward each other on a highway, and nobody's going to swerve. What happens when no one blinks, no one swerves, no one comes to their senses? A crash. Lives are lost. No survivors. It's not a pretty sight. You know, it didn't have to come to this. The American people who voted for us, put their faith in us, they don't want this to happen. They wonder if anyone in Washington is listening. And they're absolutely right in that assessment. I'll tell you, I was at a fireman's parade in the tiny, tiny village of Silver Springs in one of my most rural counties, Wyoming County. More Republicans than cows out there, and cows and Democrats, not a lot of people. But I'll tell you, we are all bound by the same feelings. This frustrated senior at the fireman parade in Wyoming County said to me, "Why can't you guys get your act together? We send you there to do a job and you guys aren't doing it." You know, he was right. He was absolutely right. And I took that to heart. And I came back here and I want to do something to restore his faith in us. And the seniors, he talked about the seniors, because we are so scared out here. I need my Social Security, I need my Medicare. Why are you guys talking about hurting us? We paid into these systems all of our lives. We don't deserve this. I said, I'll go back, I'll do the best I can, I'll fight for you. You know, they have fear, uncertainty, and disgust, all directed at the ineptitude of Washington. Well, it is wrong. It is plain wrong that we are even considering defaulting on America's obligations. It's doubly wrong that we consider defaulting on our obligations to our seniors, promises made 46 years ago this week with the advent of Medicare. The integrity and willingness to uphold and honor our promises should be the hallmark of the Constitution. And yet what I've witnessed in such a short time is a willingness to renege on our promises to our debtors, our seniors, and ultimately the American people. But right now, it's not too late to avoid that highway collision where no one walks away. The American people deserve better than this. Our small businesses deserve better than this. Our middle-class families deserve better than this. I'll tell you, we need to get on with the business of the American people and do it as soon as possible. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentlewoman yields back. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from New York, Mr. Engel, for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I rise today because I want my colleagues to hear some of the things that I'm hearing from my constituents back home. People want to know why we cannot compromise. People want to know why we cannot work together. I don't know the answers to that because I think we should. And what I see happening here is something that I haven't seen in the 23 years that I've been here. It's that people do not seem to want to move to the center and to compromise. I know some of my colleagues on the Republican side of the aisle, particularly the Tea Party-backed freshmen, have signed a pledge never to raise taxes. Well, I want to say what Senator Coburn said the other day. He said, "What am I upholding my pledge to? I uphold my pledge to abide by the Constitution, not upholding my pledge to abide by what a special interest group wants." People want us to meet in the middle. People don't understand why there seems to be intransigence. You know, we have spent too much over these past decades. And you know what else? In order to get back to where we can balance our budget and pay our bills, we can't do it all with just spending cuts. It has to be three things. It has to be spending cuts, for sure. It also happens to be, and should be, closing tax loopholes for the very wealthy who get away with paying no taxes at all, for large corporations who pay no taxes at all, for special subsidies to businesses that move their jobs overseas, to special subsidies for companies like Big Oil who don't need the subsidies. We also need to make sure that those who can afford to pay a little bit more pay a little bit more, because that's how we get our budget back in balance. But if my Republican friends only say, you know, all we're going to do is cut, and we're not going to meet the Democrats halfway, then I'm afraid we're moving to fall off a cliff. President Obama was absolutely right yesterday when he said that one side seems to be saying, my way or the highway. Tax cuts forever, even if our budget is not balanced. We as Democrats are saying, let's do it a compromise way. Let us cut spending, let us close tax loopholes, and let those who can afford to pay a little more, millionaires and billionaires, pay a little more. We are here because the American people sent us here. I know my constituents are concerned about Medicare and Medicaid, Social Security, and a New York graduate medical education. I didn't come here to devastate those programs. And I want my constituents to know that I'm going to fight like crazy to preserve Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, and GME. We cannot balance our budget on the backs of senior citizens. I want to remind my colleagues that when President Clinton, the last Democratic president before President Obama left office, we had record surpluses. President Bush came in, and we have red ink deficits as far as the eye can see. And I want to remind my Republican colleagues that 6 of the 8 Bush years, Republicans controlled both the House and both the Senate and had the presidency for 6 years. If they wanted a balanced budget amendment, they could have had it. If they wanted to try to balance the budget, they could have done it. So I don't think lectures are important now. I think there's plenty of blame to go around on all sides. We had the Bush tax cuts, we had wars, and we had reckless spending. And it was done under President Bush with Republican majorities in the House. So we need to put our heads together and move to the sensible center in terms of what the American people want to get us off this precipice that we're about to fall into. I think there's one other thing the President should do. If he sees in a few days that there's no progress being made and we are about to approach August 2nd and we're about to have this train wreck, the President should invoke the 14th Amendment. 14th Amendment says the public debt shall not be questioned, and in my estimation gives the President the authority to raise the debt ceiling by himself.
Gentleman's time
I think
has
the
expired.
President should do that if we cannot come to a compromise. I yield back.
Thank you. The gentleman yields back. Pursuant to Clause 12A